Hey everyone, it's Dr. Dan Ritchie, president of the Functional Aging Institute, and I'm joined by Dr. Katie Forth from the Zibrio Balance Company. And Katie actually was a postdoc at NASA, which I probably could ask you hours and hours of questions, and I'm sure my kids would like to ask you hours and hours of questions, since I live in the hometown of Purdue University, and where Neil Armstrong went to school, and we go by his statue often. My kids talk about space a lot. So really excited to have you on. Was really pleased to have you at the Functional Aging Summit talking about your company. And I'm actually really excited to hear about your topic today, because balance is my passion and what I did my dissertation on and what I've read hundreds of research studies on. So as always, Katie, basically our rules here for everyone listening, and we have over 390 people registered today. So obviously the topic of balance is something people are interested in. I already see 85 on live. Our rules are, I'm going to let you talk for about 30, 40, 45 minutes, however long your presentation is, and then I'll come back and moderate the Q&A. And so for those of you listening, go ahead and type your questions in as we go. I'll get to them as soon as we start. I won't interrupt you unless somebody asks a question that seems like something I should stop you, right? If you go over a term that nobody's understanding, I'll say, hey, Katie, could you explain that term just a little bit more? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll be back for Q&A. Thanks so much for your time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to talk to all of you out there in the cyberspace, the cyber world. My company is called Zibrio, and yes, it is in fact a company that's spinning out in NASA with technology that we invented for astronauts on the moon. So the topic today here, however, let's just go to a slightly better presentation. That would be better, wouldn't it? There you go, that's the one. So what we're talking about here today is, does measuring your balance empower your clients? And can it then help you to be a better trainer? Balance is one of those topics that we know it, we feel it, but in terms of the actual specifics around balance, it's a little nebulous. So why am I here talking to you today? Dan did give a good introduction. I am an expert and thought leader in balance. I've been researching balance for over 20 years. And was a scientist at NASA, as he mentioned, and I presented my work even at the World Expo 2000, which was groundbreaking balance training techniques, even back then. So another side of my experience is that I've been an elite athlete for 25 years and currently a world champion in ultimate frisbee. I was a competitive gymnast as well. So very much like to feel my science from within, as well as do the research from the outside. So let's talk about you and your clients. When you first get a client and you're looking to work with them and train them, they have different fitness goals. So the first thing you often do is ask, what are your goals? What are we going to try and achieve together? And it may be things like lose weight, or get stronger. And if you just think about those scenarios, somebody comes to you who says they want to lose weight. One of the first things you probably will do is actually then try and measure them, measure their weight, or if you prefer, measure the circumference around their waist or other locations on the body. But you get some baseline number, and then as you implement your intervention, which is your training, you can then see, well, how's it working? If you measure yourself again, are you losing weight? Or if the goal is to get stronger, you actually look at the weights. How heavy is the weight that you're lifting? Are you progressing? So just imagine trying to work with a client without knowing if weight has in fact been lost. Or if you're working with a client who's trying to get stronger, but you don't know how heavy the weights are, it makes it really difficult. And this is really what's happening in the world of balance. So today, I'm going to talk to you firstly about the importance of balance, and then move on to the 6 pillars of balance health, measuring it to be able to change it, And then how does that measurement then allow you to then motivate your clients or even motivate yourself? So balance. Let's go right back to the beginning of definitions. Balance is known as your ability to maintain yourself within your base of support. So if you take your center of gravity, center of mass, right at your around your navel, and project that down towards where your feet are. If you're standing with a wider base of support, then you're going to be a bit more stable. If you've got your feet completely together, then the chance of that little dot extending outside of your base of support is going to be a bit higher. And so our body's constantly trying to keep that center of gravity within our base of support. So that's what balance is. But how does balance training make your client better? Well, if you can control your center of gravity better, it means you're going to have a better whole body coordination. Your reactions to any disruption to that postural stability or balance is going to be better. It means you can be more agile in the things you're doing. You can coordinate your movements to navigate the world in a more fluid and capable way. And all of those pieces, of course, improve performance. So it allows us to perform better, whether it's sport or whether it's just life. So sometimes mobility is linked up with the thought of performance for life, but in my mind, it actually is all part and parcel of the same thing. We want to be more mobile, and the more mobile you are, the better you perform in your daily life as well as in your sports endeavors. And then the last point is that if you've got better balance, better control over your body, you're going to have a reduced level of injury. Also something we're very doing for clients. There's a dark side to balance though. So having it is great, but if your balance is poor, it can leave people very vulnerable, certainly to falling down. The adult athlete or just senior person, falls are the leading cause of accidental death. And while we may think that we know who those people might be, the statistics suggest that we don't. 1 in 4 fall every year. So if you just think of 4 of your older clients, 1 of them is going to go down this year. Or if you're young enough to have 4 grandparents still alive, 1 of them is going to fall this year. It's really, really shocking. And those are just the reported falls. So it's a big issue, 65 and above. And if you have a client that's 80 and above, the rate of falls is 1 in 2. So it becomes even worse. The total cost from falling in the country is $50 billion every single year. I mean, it's unnecessary. It really is. And that's because falling isn't a normal part of aging. And we need to start changing that mindset. If you speak to someone who is 85 and is concerned about falling, as a trainer, you've got this wonderful opportunity to help improve their functionality so that falling isn't a part of their life. So let's, just like we did for balance, now let's talk about the definition of a fall. So where balance, you're trying to keep that center of gravity within your base of support, a fall is just simply you don't. So the projection of your center of gravity, if it extends outside of where your base of support is, then you'll find that you will rapidly go to a lower level and fall down. You lose your balance. Now, for every individual, whatever the age, performance, like I said, performing for life, performing for sport, it's the ability to balance is a continuum. So your balance performance ability can be all the way from the range of being highly vulnerable to falling all the way through to an elite athlete that can do, back somersaults on a balance beam. It's important for us to recognize this continuum. It isn't that you turn 80 and suddenly everything goes badly. And it isn't that you're 20 and everything is amazing. So as we understand our clients and understand where they may be on this continuum, it allows us as trainers to then help those clients. So for the older adult, client that you have, there are a number of things that are associated with aging. You do have effects to vision, to your vestibular system, to somatosensory, which is mostly made up of your proprioception and touch sensations. And those are really important inputs for balancing. So even just vision, let's take that one. As eyesight starts to deteriorate, the quality of sensory information coming through isn't going to be as reliable as when they were younger. So that's one effect from aging. Sarcopenia, of course, the reduction of muscle strength, but also the switching from the type 2 fibers to the type 1 fiber. If you don't have as many of the fast twitch fibers, then you can't react to a perturbation. A dog knocks you, a child knocks you, bumps into you, you need to be able to correct yourself to keep your center of gravity within your base of support. You need those fast twitch muscle fibers to be able to do that quickly. And then, of course, we've got the other delays or reduced reaction time components from your central nervous system and also the peripheral nervous system. So a reduction in the nerve conduction and just general reaction time too. So these are things that are occurring with age. However, disuse is a major confounding factor to any of those parts, because you're sitting in there for life as you get to your older years, then of course you're going to have some of these same features just simply from not moving enough. Muscle atrophy, you'll have a reduced reaction time. So how much, when we're talking about aging and the older client, how much of their current state is based on this fixed aging issue, or how much is actually from disuse? And I'm on the side of we can always adapt, we can always improve, and I think that you also believe the same thing, given that you're all trainers. So there's a big opportunity, certainly for older adults, to increase their level of activity so that we can reduce these, in quotes, signs of aging. So back to that balance performance continuum. Some of those pieces that I talked about, they can change across decades, they can change across the years, they can change, you can get changes to balance that are monthly changes, weekly changes, and even daily changes. And so when you're thinking about balance, try and think about it in a way that is not static and fixed, but something that is highly responsive to what the body is currently experiencing. So from here, we've defined 6 pillars of balance health. You can think of these as 6 components that create change to your balance state or capability. So let's start off with sleep. If you have just one bad night's sleep, that can be very noxious to your balance. It can drop your balance up to 40%. So if you have a client that maybe is getting a little bit frustrated with their performance in any given day, you may like to ask them, how did you sleep last night? It shows a lot of care anyway, but it's rooted in science, in that sleep is very important and it's one of our pillars of balance health. Prescription medications. If you take 4 or more prescriptions, that is actually a risk factor for falling. So polypharmacy is something that physicians are very much looking at. But when you have a client who you know is taking quite a lot of medications, obviously you can't do anything about it, but it means that some of the other pieces in this pie that are more lifestyle related, you can really help encourage them to focus on those pieces to somewhat make up for this other team member that you can't do anything about. I will also say that blood pressure medications are quite noxious to balance, especially when they get changed. So there's often a window of adjustment that's about 2 to 3 weeks that that kind of medication can really affect balance. So useful to know. Fear of falling. A fear of falling is something that many older adults do exhibit, and ironically, people who have a fear of falling are more at risk for falling. So with your client, again, this is something to be sensitive of, that if you know that they have a fear of falling, and the tendency is to restrict mobility and movement, and in doing so, that in turn restricts the capability and worsens the balance. And so to provide an environment as a trainer for somebody who is fearful of falling, for them to build confidence, is going to have a very additive effect. Clinical conditions. There's a number of different clinical conditions that will affect balance. There's not a lot you can do about it as a trainer, but it's just like with the medications. It's important to be aware of it so that you can really help to reinforce the other lifestyle pillars. A vestibular problem, eyesight problems, any kind of movement dysfunctions, Parkinson's, stroke, but then also injuries, rehab. They can be very disruptive to one's balance. I think most people are aware of what a sprained ankle can do in terms of disrupting proprioception. But even just a hurt toe or a bit of arthritis in a knee, trying to help the client to understand its role in balance is another way to reinforce some of the same messages that you may be talking about with just general health, strength, and endurance and all the rest of it. So with the general fitness, obviously this is important for better balance, to have better aerobic capacity, better blood flow throughout the entire body is going to be highly advantageous. The one that I do want to really concentrate on, though, is the next one, which is strength. Quadricep muscle is particularly important for balance. It's part of a group that we'd refer to as the anti. That takes us back to the space world, as I've come out of. But really, they just mean resisting gravity, and the quadricep is particularly important for that. And then there's to reflect on the types of strength work that you're doing with your client. Is it functional? Are you using machines, free weights? These are things that you can try to put together in terms of what's best for your client. Obviously, safety is number one. You need to make sure that they're not going to hurt themselves and they've got good technique. Sometimes that puts the dial towards machine weight. However, in terms of balance, it is very important to think about functional exercises. It's very useful for the sensory adaptation as well as the pure muscle fiber adaptation too. So from those 6 pillars of balance, those are just some examples of things that may change balance, and you can obviously advise your clients on those pillars. However, it's very difficult to know where everything stands until you can actually measure things. As I mentioned before, trying to lose weight without even knowing where you are or where you're going is tricky. So to be able to measure balance, there are a number of different ways. Some of them are more meaningful than others. You could do some functional tests, like standing one leg stand, or there's a PT clinical test called the sit to stand test, or the time get up and go. So these are all functional tests. They've got a certain level of predictive capability of falling. At NASA, we use this very large piece of equipment that's also very expensive. And just like we were talking about, you've got your center of gravity projecting down onto the ground. This gentleman is standing on a force plate that is measuring that exact spot. So if you just take one of the spots on the graphs on the right, that relates to one moment in time. So as the gentleman is trying to stand still, and of course we can never stand still, it's impossible, and over time you'll see a splattering of dots, and that's him moving, that's his sway. What we were able to do while we were at NASA was to actually create an algorithm that was a lot more sensitive, that could identify patterns of stability and instability. So these are reflected with the different color dots. So before, you would see that all the dots are exactly the same. It's very hard to distinguish between those two examples. And then when we applied artificial intelligence to it, we could then see, all right, where are the clusters of stability? Where are the dynamic escapes that signify lack of stability? And we were able to do this with just a very simple piece of hardware, in that it's just a scale that looks like a bathroom scale. And the score that we can put together is a number from 1 to 10. So if you score 1, 2, or 3, that means high risk for falling. 4, 5, and 6 is a moderate risk. 7 above is green and in the clear. So I'm sure a lot of you who are listening to this right now are thinking, oh, well, I'd be in the green. I'd be at least a 7 or above. And that's not necessarily the case, even for yourselves. So what we find is that averages can be around sort of 6 or so, depending on your age, where that average might be. But keep in mind what I said about one of the pillars of balance, that if you had a bad night's sleep, you could drop by 40%. So let's say you were up at an 8, you're doing pretty well. You could drop down to a 6 or a 5 just from having that bad night's sleep. So this is a way to really see where you are today and also where you're going. The fact that the scale has such a sensitive algorithm associated means we can just do this test with your eyes open. That means no harness, no spotter. It's got much higher resolution than other tests. Creates this very simple number to understand and also to relay to your client. And it's also predictive of falls up to 12 months. So it is a medical device as well. Now, how does this compare to some of those functional tests that you might want to do? Well, the functional tests aren't predictive of falling. So we really like to have a test that you can measure, quantify, and then also have it be a meaningful measure of balance, especially for the older client. So Fitbit has shown us the power of measuring things. If you measure it, you can do something about it. And Fitbit said, 10,000 steps, that's what you all need to do. And sure enough, people are competing. They're wearing their Fitbits and other trackers and trying to see if they can get to that magic number. Now, interestingly, in the scientific literature, that magic number isn't quite so magic, but that would be a topic for another webinar, I'd expect. We found that measuring balance is also incredibly powerful too, and we'll call it the Fitbit effect, if you like. We left our scale in a senior living facility. These are independent, it was an independent community where people, were happily engaging with the community. They didn't need assistance of any kind. They could just go and test themselves whenever they wanted. And what we found was that the number of falls, or number of people who fell before we even introduced our technology, was about 40% of them. And then when we allowed them to use our scale, we had our technology in that facility, we had a 50% reduction in the number of people who fell. 50%, I mean, shocking. And we actually had above 70% reduction in total number of falls. And this was only by providing their score. The power of measuring. People, they generally know what to do about things, but if you can quantify it and allow them to measure it, it really motivates them to want to do things. Now, that particular community was, they had exercise classes, they even had balance classes going on, which was great. But do people actually go to them all the time, or how does it feel urgent to them to really do that exercise? And we believe that measuring and quantifying that Fitbit effect is what happened. And sure enough, there was a reduction in falls. So here's an example of a single individual from that particular study. You've got the balance score on the far left side on the y-axis. We've got the color bands of the risk categories, so the red, the yellow, and the green. This particular lady, she was about 87. She was scoring very low, and she did fall, as we would have predicted. Fortunately, didn't break anything. She was prescribed physical therapy, and in doing the physical therapy, her score actually went up. Now, she was testing herself all by herself. We weren't anywhere near her at this point, and we were just seeing the numbers rolling in. Well, she carried on doing her exercise in the balance classes after the PT had ended. But then what happened around the holidays was fascinating. They stopped the exercise classes for a month at that facility. Goodness knows why, but they did. And sure enough, her score dropped. And when she resumed her classes, the score went up again. And then she maintained that all the way through. And actually what's missing on this particular slide is that the following year at the exact same time, it went down again for the same reason. But all it took was one test, and she then knew what to do, and it went back up again. So this is just one example of how the power of measuring, the power of having your score can really motivate people and help them to understand where they are. She had fallen when she was scoring in the high risk range, and when she was back in that high risk range, she knew she definitely didn't want to be there, and she wanted to keep checking herself and doing her exercises to make sure that she prevented another event. So this is where trainers come into the equation. You've got the power of measuring, which is really powerful, but you also need to have a trainer. Having a trainer means that not only can we measure where you are and where you're going, but the trainer can now change your category, change your path. So somebody who, this particular graph that you're looking at is pretty much a generic graph about all physiological qualities. You could put, instead of balance on the y-axis, you could put muscle strength. We know that there's deterioration with age, and we know that you can also enhance things by the volume of exercise and the specificity of the exercises that you're doing. And so this is just to show that if you are in the yellow, let's say you're a moderate exerciser, and with time you are deteriorating in balance, that then having a trainer that helps you get to allows you to do more exercise and more targeted exercise, you then move into a different category, and your path is now different. There is an alternative to this, which is that there is the not doing anything and or doing even less, and that can move you down to a much lower path. So the combination of being able to measure and having a trainer is just so empowering for an individual to be able to improve their state of where they are and where they want to be. Now, we've seen the impact of people's desire to want to measure themselves. We do balance screenings a fair bit. We've actually just been to the National Senior Games, where we measured 900 of the athletes, which was pretty awesome. And this is just two pictures of two different screening events. We have people that will queue up for over 20 minutes. We even had MCA at a Silver Sneakers where people waited for an hour and a half just to get that score. They just wanted to know. So if anything, that just illustrates the how valuable such a number is to somebody. And then the other part is that we see that when people do actually do the test, that they then sign up for new services and new classes. So what we do now when we do our screenings at a gym or at any kind of senior center is that we'll have a class list of the classes, the exercise classes, or the personal trainer list, because as soon as somebody steps on that scale, it's as if they have an epiphany and they're very receptive to any information to help guide them to be better. So that's another advantage of this particular technology. So to be able to measure and then also motivate your clients within Balance Health is a pretty wonderful thing. The scale, we're trying to make it very affordable. So for an individual, it's $249. It takes 60 seconds to do. You simply just stand on there with your eyes open. There is an app that connects to it that helps guide you through those pillars of balance that as I talked about, and gives a little bit of information and help. And this can be purchased on the Zebrio website as a pre-order currently. But there's another thing that I'd like to talk to the people on the line about, which is that we understand the importance of education, and we're really trying to create a balance movement where we will have balance ambassadors who can really help guide people through. And if this is something that you're interested in, we welcome you to put in an application at thezebrio.com/join. The benefits, first of all, you get a huge discount off your own scale. You get free access to a balance specialist training course that is 3 hours long. And with that, you get identified within our database as a balance specialist, so we can refer people to you. So when they have that epiphany on a scale, wherever it may be, maybe in a doctor's office, that they now are looking for a trainer who can help them. And we want to be able to refer them over to you. So that is the end of the formal part of the presentation. I welcome questions and the chance to chat further about it. But like I said, if you are interested in being a Balance Ambassador, please just contact us. We'd love to hear from you. This is going to take an army of people to be able to save the world from falling down.
Awesome, thanks so much. Are you able to turn your video back on, Katie?
I can.
Down at the bottom, there should be a big video button. So I'll ask sort of the first obvious question that I'm wondering. So the Balance Specialist Training Course, which you're giving free access to, you said it's about 3 hours. Like what are people going to get from that? What sort of, is it training tactics, how to lead a group session? Like what's in the 3 hours?
Yeah, and I'll just quickly say that apparently the host has stopped the video, so I think it may be on your end, actually, on that part.
Got it.
So the Balance Specialist Training Course, the first unit is all about the science behind balance. Really want to help educate people about, well, what are all the different pieces that are contributing to one's balance, because it's very complicated. And so we were trying to simplify that. And from there, it allows the person being trained to then learn about falls, the risk of falls, what really is a fall, and how do you truly prevent a fall. And it's not just safety. It's not just about rugs and about get myself all the way on the camera. There we go. It's not just about rugs and keeping the cords out of the way. And then we move it into lots of different examples and progressions of exercise. We're trying to provide the trainer the tools so that they can create their program, because it does need to be personalized to each individual. But with all these different progressions, you could use the exact same information for a 95-year-old who has fallen, or with an elite athlete. So it gives ideas about how to layer in difficulty. So like I said, it's full progressions, and it's fun.
Okay, I got a bunch of questions coming in. So Joseph actually asked one of the questions that I was wondering. So Zebrio, including is associated AI, sounds fascinating. Aren't we neglecting the client's dynamic balance through measuring static only? I wanted to ask that as well. So we know a lot of falls happen, in dynamic situations, not just static. So maybe talk to us a little bit about, measuring static balance only.
That's an excellent question. Hopefully you can hear me okay, because the video just froze. Now, if you think about the way the body controls itself, it doesn't have two control mechanisms, one for living and one for locomoting. So this concept of static balance versus dynamic balance is really something that's come about. It's very difficult to measure balance. So that's the first thing I'd like to challenge and encourage you to start thinking about how is the body controlling itself. This particular algorithm, the dynamic component of postural stability. This is the only way that we're able to predict, is because we're so sensitive to the dynamic patterns that are going on, or even when you're trying to stand still. So we don't have to close your eyes, stand on one leg, create a difficult scenario to expose. We can already see the weakness with that high level of resolution.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I mean, to me, it logically makes sense. If we can really measure your static balance accurately and you're scoring poorly, obviously your balance isn't going to be much improved if you're in a dynamic setting. So I mean, it's really fascinating. And a couple people are asking some of the same questions that I want to ask. So, what's some of the research behind the science of the scale, particularly, right? Like this scale you developed. And then, so you have this scale. Are you charging for it? Are people paying for their test? Is it just sort of a free access to then show them that they need your balance class? Maybe explain both of those.
Yeah, the science behind this development, we've been researching it for over 15 years. Originally, it was understanding astronauts on the moon and when they come back from Earth, what are the problems that they experience, and they have an adaptation to microgravity that off their balance. So we're constantly trying to understand it and come up with to explain it, and then to measure them to identify when they are now readapted back to Earth's environment. So that's the origin of it, and from there we were able to then series of many studies to test with people on Earth, older adults. We have done one prospective study that went on for 2 years. Some of those data I did talk about, and we've just come to the end of a large-scale clinical trial with over 400 people in 15 different settings, different sites, 2 outpatient clinics, 2 physical therapy clinics, a hospital, as well as 100 community dwellers that live at home and 100 independent living residents across 8 different facilities. So I believe we've got a nice broad sample of people, and from that we've got comparative data with currently used clinical practices, as well as this prospective data of tracking people for 12 months and seeing how predictive are we. And very predictive is the answer. We've just presented those data to the American Bariatric Society annual conference, and also to the American College of Preventive Medicine. So those papers are due to come out probably early in the new year, I expect.
Okay, great. Lori asking the basic question we all want to know: when do you anticipate shipping of Zibrio units?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so we anticipate it just before the end of the year. And you did have another question, didn't you, Dan, about the balance specialist training course?
Question about, I think I asked you first, one of the people that asked about the research behind it also asked, so are you offering the test for free? Do you charge a fee? My assumption of how I'd use it in my facility is sort of a free assessment test, and then once people see where they're at, they're going to want to sign up for your program because they realize they need it. But just curious, do you charge for the test?
Not in that context, no. We will be charging for the test within a clinical setting, but no, we're trying to make it available. We're trying to make the access as easy as we possibly can. So it is a home device, and then also for trainers as well.
Okay, so trainers can order it today, but they really shouldn't expect to see delivery until December?
That's correct. However, we'd love to start getting a relationship going with trainers who are passionate about balance. We already have some balance ambassadors that we're starting to showcase. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to learn from you as well, and work out how we can support you as best we possibly can.
Okay. Basic question on how to use it. What sort of floor is required? Can I use this scale on a carpeted floor? Does it have to be a concrete floor? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, these are really good questions. All the right ones, in fact. Yes, scales and carpets don't go well together. So for our smaller version, the very portable version, that does need to be on a flat floor that isn't carpeted. We've used it on tile and concrete. That's been fine. One of the things that we do is we actually have a metal plate, so that if we find ourselves demoing on a carpeted surface, that's what we do. Do have a bigger version that will be subsequently released, but not for another sort of 9 months. And that is the bigger version that has a display and also a metal plate embedded in it, so that for all those carpeted people, we do want to try and provide an option.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my hunch was you're going to need a solid floor, not a carpet the scales can sink into. Couple more questions here. Kimberly wants to know, a condition to being an ambassador is to use social media. If units aren't available until the end of the year, when does using social media start in order to be qualified as an ambassador?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking for people to be passionate, and we're reasonable people ourselves. So we'd like to understand the way that you interact with people. We have a kind of minimum level, but we want to talk to you about it and see what fits in life and works for you. Obviously, until the scales are ready, there's not going to be much of an expectation there. But given we are looking for people who are passionate about educating, I think it would be a no-brainer to want to share a piece of content that is all about, something to learn about balance.
Yeah, and again, all people need to do is go to Zibrio.com/join to get more info on the ambassador program, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I do see a couple people raising their hands. If you've got questions, please type them into the Q&A box. That's all I can do. I'm not going to be able to reach out to raised hands, so please type it in. Robin asks, what balance exercises have you found to be the most effective?
Great question. It really depends on the person. I cannot stress enough the personalization that's necessary for balance. And so that's where it takes 3 hours to really explain it in the training course. But for example, somebody who is heavily reliant on the visual side, you need to challenge the body in a way that moves them away from using that visual sense. However, if you had a blind person close their eyes, that's not going to really make much of a difference.
Right. That's a great example.
So it's there's no single exercise for all sizes, and this is where it really provides a great service to your clients, because it does give this personalization that they're craving.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I tell people there is no perfect balance exercise, because it depends on what your abilities and deficits are and what you need, and it's so variable. Let's see, we got a couple more questions here coming in. Make sure I'm getting them all. What about maintenance, technical issues? So what's the weight limit on the scale? So Suzette asked several different. What if I have tech issues with the scale? What sort of maintenance does it require? And I'm curious, is there a weight limit? Can you get a 400-pound person on this thing?
Yeah, we're the scales through manufacturing just now to do those testing. We know at least 350 for sure is covered. We're trying to see if we can get it up to the 500. So that's to be tested, TBT.
So what about sort of tech issues? I mean, obviously you haven't rolled the scale out in mass, but so I'm a trainer in Indiana, and I'm having issues with my scale. How are you guys going to support that?
Yeah, I mean, it's this is obviously, the news is that as a scale, it's a fairly straightforward piece of equipment. It's not, the real clever part is within the algorithmic work. And so, I mean, just for example, we've dropped one a number of times and it's been totally fine. We even dropped it and had it fall out, put it back in, and so there's little that can go wrong with it. It's just like a loose wire is probably the main thing that could possibly happen. We will have a support team for who has issues, and we'll from there.
Okay. Nancy, nice comment, says, my father lost his vision 4 years ago, major game changer in his life. He has a personal trainer that helps him tremendously. As you shared, balance training has to be personalized. Thanks for all you are doing! Exclamation point. Thanks for that, Nancy. Mary Beth asks, does the scale download through each individual's phone app?
Yeah, the app is actually for free. You can all just get it today. So, you know, your client can have the app. They can just manually enter in the score and they step on it.
Okay, cool. That's great. I see lots of long-term applications for that app. All right, we've got just a couple minutes left, so if you've got a question left, please ask it. If you're on the recording, and I know you're dying to ask a question right now, and you're like, I can't ask a question, just go to Zibrio.com/join, fill out to become an ambassador, and start the conversation there. I know they want to talk to you. I know they're interested in finding out your interest and passion about balance. So please do that. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Actually, let's do this one first. Bianca asks, what is the name of the app?
Good question. It's the Zibrio Balance Coach.
Zibrio Balance Coach. All right, awesome. Robin, follow-up question asks, which muscle groups are most important for strengthening to improve balance?
The quad and the bum. I mean, it's the anti-gravity extensors are the important ones, and you know, you can actually just look at someone and see the flat thigh and the flat bottom and know that there's some work that needs to be done there.
Yeah. Cody and I say a lot of times, you know, lower body functional strength is so critical to balance, and sometimes we get too complicated with all the different balance games we want to do, and it's like people just need to be functionally stronger in a lot of cases. So especially, I thought you made a great point. I haven't had a good night's sleep and then I fall, right? Or put someone in some other scenario. They haven't had a good night's sleep and now we're making them do something they're not used to doing, and now we expect them to climb a flight of stairs, and now we throw this at them and all of a sudden they fall, and it's like, gee, mom's never fallen before. It's like, well, we set them up with so many scenarios on top of the fact they don't have enough lower body strength, and now it happens, right? And we're like, I never knew that. I never even knew they had a balance issue, right? So this is fascinating stuff. I can't wait to get my hands on the scale. In fact, I was texting Cody as we were talking, and I don't know what you guys are thinking in terms of large research studies, but I mean, I got 250 clients I want to put on the scale right now. You know, get them on the scale, and then we can start studying their scores every month, and of course their fall data, their reported falls, and obviously if we get hundreds of FAI related facilities doing that, I think you could have a massive amount of fall related data related to the scores on this thing. That's really cool. So
yeah.
Well, I'm going to let you go because we don't have any other questions coming in. For those of you listening again on the recording, because you weren't on live, I encourage you to hit Zibrio.com/join, get your $100 discount, apply to be an ambassador, and just check this out, because this is really cool stuff that you guys are doing, and I'm excited about it. Thanks so much for being part of our summit. Thanks for speaking there, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I feel like I found my tribe.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.